Cornel West's book, Race Matters, is an exploration of race, justice, and morality in America. Written in the aftermath of 1992 Los Angeles riots, West's essays confront the spiritual, political, and cultural crisis undergoing racial tensions. Combining philosophy, theology, and social critique, he argues that race is not merely a matter of color or culture, but a mirror reflecting America's moral condition. West examines the psychological wounds of racism, the decay of black leadership, and the struggle for identity in a society divided by class, gender, and race. West begins with the essay Nihilism in Black America, where he defines nihilism as the sense of hopelessness and meaninglessness that haunts many black communities. He attributes this crisis not solely to poverty or discrimination, but to a deeper moral and spiritual void. The collapse of belief in one's worth and purpose, born from centuries of oppression, has led to despair and self destructive behavior. To heal, he calls for a politics of conversion grounded in love, care, and community, rebuilding rather than mere economic reform or political representation. In the pitfalls of racial reasoning, West critiques identity politics that reduce complex human experiences to rigid racial categories. Both liberal colorblindness and conservative moralism failed to grasp the lived realities of black Americans. Racial identity must be understood historically and ethically, not as a static essence but as a dynamic response to oppression. True progress comes when racial discourse moves beyond blame and essentialism toward empathy and moral accountability. The crisis of black leadership exposes the moral and political decline of African American leadership. West identifies three types of leaders: race effacing, those who ignore race identifying, those who overemphasize racial solidarity, and race transcending, those who engage moral and political complexity. He laments that contemporary leaders have often become celebrities or technocrats, disconnected from grassroots communities. Drawing on figures like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, West insists that authentic leadership must unite political vision with moral courage and selfless service. In demystifying the new black conservatism, West examines the rise of black conservatives such as Clarence Thomas, while acknowledging the appeal of self help and personal responsibility. West argues that their ideology ignores structural injustice. He warns that a conservatism detached from historical memory and collective struggle risks validating white supremacy under the guise of meritocracy. West insists that true empowerment cannot come from denial of racism or abandonment of social solidarity. In the essay Black Sexuality, the Taboo Subject, West confronts the historical silencing and distortion of black sexuality. He explores how racist myths have demonized black bodies and shaped both white fear and black self perception. He also critiques the hypocrisy within black communities where issues of sexuality are often repressed due to religious conservatism. Reclaiming black sexuality requires honesty, historical understanding, and moral maturity. It is essential for cultural and spiritual liberation. The essay, The Paradox of the African American Rebellion, discusses the ambivalent results of the 1960s civil rights movements. Though political and legal gains were made, the deeper spiritual and moral transformation envisioned by leaders like King was not fully realized. Consumerism, materialism, and class divisions have fragmented the black community. He calls for a revival of prophetic religion and democratic values that challenge both racial injustice and capitalist greed. In On Black Jewish Relations, West addresses the tension between two historically oppressed groups in America. Mutual understanding and competition for recognition have placed earlier solidarity. The problem lies not in essential differences, but in the failure to sustain a moral and historical dialogue about suffering and justice. West urges both communities to embrace empathy and ethical responsibility in their shared struggle against oppression. The concluding essay, Malcolm X and Black Rage, presents Malcolm as a complex figure of resistance and transformation. West admires Malcolm's intellectual honesty, courage, and critique of white supremacy. However, he also sees the limits of his nationalism. Malcolm's later years, marked by his spiritual growth and global humanism, exemplify the potential for moral and political maturity. Malcolm's legacy reminds Americans that rage against injustice must be transformed into constructive, compassionate action. West's central message is that America's racial crisis is fundamentally a moral and spiritual one. Economic policies and political reforms are necessary, but insufficient without moral vision and empathy. He calls for a love ethic, a radical humanism that acknowledges the dignity of all people. This ethic transcends ideological divisions, urging individuals to face historical truth and take collective responsibility for justice.